So, we're recording. I don't think you've met Mark.
Wait a minute. Who are you?
Mark, what is your title?
Officially, it's Director of Operations.
Officially is the Director of Operations. I didn't know what that meant when we interviewed. I think I was told I needed a Director of Operations. And I was like, what do they do? So I think I interviewed Mark, and I was like, Mark, what does a Director of Operations do? So, Mark, what does a Director of Operations do?
Well, I know I joked with you that it's actually a poop catcher.
Pretty much, yes.
But I like to think of myself as really a problem solver, right? And that doesn't really have boundaries to it, right? So as it relates to the business, if there's something that needs to be smoothed out, let's figure out how to smooth that out. I don't mind solving a problem once, but if I have to solve the same problem a second time, that's something we need to figure out. We got to change something so we don't have it.
I think the first problem that when you started, there was 3 or 4 problems we laid out. One of the first big ones was rental applications.
Yep.
We knew that several things had happened all at once that was impacting our rental application processing. One was a Newell specific issue. Newell was growing, and we were doing a lot more rental application processing. On top of that, we were having more rental applications being submitted. We were seeing an increase in the number of rentals per unit. So that was almost like an exponential increase. And then we were seeing certain things that were coming down, both legislatively and insurance, legal side of protections of information, how we would retrieve information, what we were going to be doing with that information, how we would protect it, and make sure that very sensitive information wouldn't get released, particularly when it came down to background checks. And we were seeing more and more associations are doing background checks.
Right.
The background checks, I think, have gone, when I first started, background checks were probably less of our associations did background checks than didn't do. Most of them did not do background checks.
Right.
I think we've moved to a place now where associations, there is a level of exclusivity, there's a level of standard that we want to maintain, so background checks are being done on individuals who are going to buy a unit or might rent any unit, and the information that's there is very sensitive, and we wanted a way to control that. And so those were the core of it. On top of it, we wanted to make sure that we could create a way of having transparency, because we have all of these applications that are coming in, and there's board members who are getting a phone call from someone saying, hey, I turned in a rental application, what's going on? And then the board members reaching out to us, what's going on with this application? And more often than not, what had happened was it was an incomplete application was turned in, or a payment wasn't received. And so we wanted to come up with a way to bring all of that together.
Yeah, the rental application as it started off was an inherently inefficient process. Somebody would fill out the application without knowing that they needed to also send in a lease and also send in a check. And so what was happening is we'd get an application either in the mail or even if by email, but there wasn't a lease. So we'd wait a couple weeks for the lease to come in, again by mail or by email, and then that's great, but we didn't have the check. And so that's the basics setup as far as what is needed in those rental applications. But we can't really start processing it until we have all the information. So the nice thing about tenant evaluation is it puts everybody accountable at the right time. So if you're the tenant and you're getting ready to lease a place, you're on the hook at first to making sure that you fill out the application, submit the paperwork that the association is requesting, whether that's just the lease or if that's approving a background check or whatever, and then you're doing the payment all in one place, and you're accountable for that until it gets completed, and then once it's completed, then it moves on to the next person. Newell's the next person that's accountable to check, make sure verify that it's complete. If the background check comes back to sort of associate that with that application, then we also check to make sure that the owner is current on their assessments. And for some communities, it's they're not allowed to rent for the first 2 years, so we make sure that they're not in that blackout period. Once we've gotten all that together, and we don't approve it at that point. All we do is we hand it off to the board to approve. So once we hand it off to the board to approve, then they're accountable making sure that they go through the information and approve it. And so it just makes it a much more, using this new tool, this tenant evaluation tool, makes it a much more efficient process and makes the person that should be accountable at the right time.
So, and one of the other things, I touched on data security because that is something that we are trying to keep at the forefront of our mind. We have year over year seen more attempts at data intrusion. And one of the areas that we know we're weak on is director email accounts. Mm-hmm. We've had many directors whose email accounts have been compromised. And while that doesn't directly compromise a Newell system, whenever we send out this information via email, like an application packet, that information is there.
It's there, yeah.
And so if there was to be, let's say that we have a director at Apple Tree Condominium Association, and Apple Tree Condominium Association's treasurer's email address is compromised, all of the information that's there, we have to put out disclosures on. So it's not just a situation where, Newell didn't lose data, but the director did. We now have to disclose all those anybody who's had a rental application, we have to send an email out to them and basically say, hey, it is possible that your personal information has been distributed.
Yep.
This has eliminated that completely.
It does, yeah. Tenant evaluation is very good at recognizing what data that people are submitting is private data that needs to be protected. That data is encrypted. We only see a portion of the Social Security number, for example. We only see the last 4 of that. So they're up on the latest data protection regulations and keeps us and the associations out of harm's way when it comes to protecting data.
So I know we rushed the implementation of this.
Yep.
And that was a conscious decision. And if I could go back in time, there are things I would have done differently. I still would have rushed it because I think that we are going into season now and we do have the system in place. Yes. There are more waves than I would have liked, and there are things that I think we could have done much better that would have eliminated those waves. But to have that system in place and have it implemented in a period of time of, I guess we probably started this maybe 6 months ago or so originally?
We started it about 6 months ago, making sure that it would work. Right. In reality, it's been in the last 2 months that we really pushed the go button.
Yeah, the goal was to make sure that our season is generally starting right around January, most of our rentals. Yep. We wanted to make sure that we had a system in place by December and hopefully by November. We have spent a month or two evaluating options to select what would be the best system to put in place, and then beta testing it effectively across a small sample of associations to find out how to make it work, how to not make it work, and then implementing it wide scale across the Newell associations. And I apologize to anyone who's felt pain in that. We were building the airplane while we were up in the air because we wanted to make sure we reached a certain point. And I think in some way, while there were definitely some waves and stuff that happened there was definitely also some good that came of that too.
Right.
And moving forward, I think it's a fantastic system. I am getting a lot of very positive feedback on it I can't say completely without exception, but 99% of the negative feedback I have gotten has turned around to becoming positive feedback after it's been explained, or at least being accepting and neutral. I would say the feeling is generally positive. If someone was negative, it moves to positive once they understand why we're doing it. And if not positive, at least neutral. I don't think there's anybody who has completely said, no, I'm completely uncomfortable with this, I don't want to use this.
I can think of one association.
One association?
And what I'd say is, yes, we were absolutely building the plane, right? I like to use the picture of I was building the parachute while I was falling through the air. At some point, I did push out a message saying, this is the way we're going to do it. And I guess I think that the tone of that message was maybe a little bit more assertive than I probably should have. And so that I have apologized, and I will continue to apologize. I did that wrong. And so that's certainly a learning experience for me. But the thing to remember is we're not changing the process at all. We're changing the method that we're capturing the information. And so instead of collecting a bunch of papers, we're putting it into an electronic file that we can track. That said, some of the pushback that I've gotten is, well, why are you using this sort of generic form instead of our specific form? Or why are you doing a background check where we didn't before? Or why are you charging this amount when we used to charge that amount? The nice thing about this system is we can continue to tweak it and adjust it so that it's exactly the way that the association wants it. So it's an absolute must that we use the paper form that you had before. We can do that.
Yeah, I think that, and that's the other thing to make clear in this is that at the end of the day, we want to do what's best for the association. And if there is an exception, and apparently we have one at least, if there's an exception where we need to do something different, we're going to do it. But we want to do what's best for the association, whether it's this or something else. One of the reasons we selected this system is if you look at the legislative history of how this has been going down and the changes that have happened over time, the rental application processing fees originally, probably 20 years ago when it started, were quite unregulated. And it was almost a source of revenue either to the association or to the management company. You could charge as much as you wanted. They then regulated them, and it was designed to provide a fee and a service and match that fee to the service. So in order to process this rental application and to do the background check and to do all of this, you could charge X amount of money, and that money was supposed to go to paying the process. It wasn't designed to be a profit stream anymore. It's sort of like Estoppels or this all was about the same period of time that this was going down. It then moved to, we want you to do more. There's more data requirement now. There's more requirement for keeping these rental applications more, and so they increased what could be charged for the processing fee. Newell's goal is to continue having this to be at least some level of a revenue stream to associations. It'll never be what it once was, where you can have an application, because when we're going back 20 years, you had an application and you literally filled it out and gave it to somebody with $100, and then they looked at it and could throw it away, and there was no processing that would happen. To today, where you have an application, you have to verify that information is correct and filled out. You're going to run a background check. You're going to take all that information, load it into a database. You're going to save a copy of that application for future reference for the next X number of years. And so the situation has changed quite a bit. But our goal is to continue to have it to be a source of income that can be shared with the association, which I think kind of differentiates us, again, from where we've seen a lot of different management companies go. Anything else we should touch on our rental application discussions?
No, other than just I want to come back to it. If there's something in the let us know, and we'll figure out a way to make it work. That there is enough flexibility in the system that we can adjust that.
Correct, and that was another reason we selected Tenant Evaluation to partner with. Is they have the ability to customize most everything. There may or may not be a cost to it. It just depends on what we're asking them to do. They have been, I think, pretty good partners. We said this has been about a 6-month process, and at least a month or 2 months of this was trying to figure out who did we want to partner with. And then there was probably another 2 months of it that was, is this really a good partner before we roll this out across everybody? Yeah. And so I think those were successful parts of this. I agree with you that email was unfortunate that went out to all of the residents. We should have done a better job communicating that with our board members first and with our own management team first. We have learned from that, and that is one of the things that's good is usually if we make a mistake, we don't make it again. That's not a mistake we'll make again. Yeah. But I'm very happy with the partner we selected. I'm happy with the process that's going on, and even yesterday I got a compliment from one of our board president who actually reached out to me because he feels that, and I don't know if this is true or not, you actually probably would, he feels that the application processing is much more efficient, like from the time a person drops it off to when he's seeing it, and he's very appreciative of that.
It's worlds different as far as efficiency. Back to what was happening, a lot of times from when we actually got the first application to having it complete, a lot of times it was a month, because there would be, it'd be mailing coming from up north, and it's a week waiting, and so it's much more efficient, and everything can be done in a secure environment on the online, and it just speeds everything up.
And then we'll have a like a tutorial walkthrough or something that we can post up as well, so that any directors will see how the system works, and we'll be able to see it on a screen and give you kind of a little walkthrough. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us for our tenant evaluation talk.
Thank you.